Well, thank you so much, and good morning to everybody, or good afternoon, as the case may be. We're going to be focusing on today on a tough area of payroll, and it's not that the laws necessarily are so tough, which they are a little complicated, but it's also one of the problems is we never know when people are traveling. That's always seems to be the problem. I always find out people are traveling like a week after they come back, which doesn't really do me any good sometimes. So we're going to talk about two facets of two areas that how we have to deal with travel pay. The first one is going to be basically looking at travel pay from the wage and hour point of view. So what is travel pay? Why should I have a policy? What are the requirements for paying somebody when they travel, et cetera? Then the next part we're going to look at is travel pay under the IRS rules, because we pay for people to travel, and we need to know if we do reimburse for travel or pay for travel, is it taxable or is it non-taxable? So we'll look at it from both points of view. So first we're going to start with travel pay under the wage and hour laws. So what does the Federal Department of Labor require, and what do each state's Department of Labor require for an employee who travels? So the first question we have to ask ourselves is actually, what is travel pay? Now, again, we're going to be talking about a travel pay policy. You really should have a written policy that explains exactly how travel pay is going to be handled, not only because of the fact that it helps you in payroll understand, but it also helps your employees understand what they're going to be paid for, because it's very difficult rules for payroll to deal with. But imagine as you're an employee, you think you're supposed to be paid for everything and you're not paid for anything, and even though that might be correct, you get mad and you go to the Department of Labor. So the basic thing we have to look at is we need a travel pay policy to explain everything to the employee and to payroll, but it also kind of finalizes, for example, when is travel pay hours worked? When do I have to pay an employee for traveling? Okay? And, of course, what are all the various compliance issues that might come up? And then what do I do if I've got two different laws that conflict with each other? For example, if I've got a federal law that says one thing and a state law, or what if I've got triple state laws that conflict with each other? This is what your travel pay policy has to address and answer these questions, and hopefully we'll answer those today for you. How does travel pay affect overtime calculations? And, of course, are there any travel pay differences for exempt and non-exempt employees? And are there any special circumstances I have to look at that would require me to pay an employee for traveling? So the basic problem is that travel is a hidden problem, because we never know, as I said, when someone in my department, or when someone in the company is traveling. So it's usually done through accounts payable, through their supervisor, maybe even human resources might know about it. But it's very rare for payroll to find out about traveling until after the fact, which by then it's kind of too late, okay, especially in the tax area. So what we have to look at is we have to know that our employees are traveling. So somehow you're going to have to set up a travel pay policy, and part of that policy is accounts payable's got to tell you when somebody gets an airline ticket. Okay, that's probably about the easiest way to do it. Anytime somebody gets an airline ticket, a bus ticket, a train ticket, or anything, you have to be aware that they are traveling. This is just the way it has to be. So you're going to have to work with other departments in order to make sure you have the information you need. Now, since travel pay falls under the federal law, which it's the whole country, and state wage and hour laws, we're going to have some conflicts. So can we resolve these conflicts? That's probably the easiest thing of this whole thing to resolve. And the resolution is very simple. You take the Strickland standard. Whichever gives the employee more money, that's the standard you follow. So if the federal government says, nah, you don't have to pay for that, but the state government says, yes, you do, then you pay. If the state government says, nah, you don't have to pay for that, but the federal government says you do, then you do. So whichever is going to give the employee more money, that's the regulation you follow. And then you look at it per state. Now remember, when somebody is traveling, with the exception of anybody that is a resident of California temporarily leaving California, so we got 49 states that we're going to deal with first. Whenever an employee is traveling, they're going to be under the wage and hour law of the place where their body ends up, not where their body started. So if my body starts in New York, but then ends up in Mississippi, once I get to Mississippi, I'm under Mississippi law. not New York law. Okay? It's where the work is being performed as to the wage and hour law. Now, everybody's subject, obviously, to the federal because that's the over blanket of the federal law. But under the state laws, with the exception of California, everybody's where their body is. Now, why does California do that separately? Because in California, they have the strictest of the wage and hour laws of any state. They have double time, overtime, things like that. So they want to protect their citizens, and so what they say is that if a California resident just temporarily leaves California, like I have to run over to Arizona for a couple of weeks to call on a client, I do not lose the protection of my California wage and hour law. So never take a California employee off of California wage and hour law unless they move permanently out of California. Okay, they're permanently not going to work in California anymore. So other than that, you want to keep them on California law, and that way you will never have a problem. Is it possible that you might be able to say, oh, I couldn't? Yes, it is possible, but it isn't worth the penalties, okay, for failure to follow California wage and hour law. So the thing we're going to talk about right now is paying travel pay as a wage and hour issue. So since this is part of the Fair Labor Standards Act, and it's part of the Portal to Portal Act that we're going to talk about, then it only applies to employees who are covered under the Fair Labor Standards Act. So those who are exempt from the Fair Labor Standards Act as executive, administrative, professional, or outside sales, over $100,000 or a few other computer situations, they get a salary. Therefore, we don't care what they do when it comes to travel pay. Not for the wage and hour law part of it, with one exception I'll mention in just a minute. So we're not going to worry about that. So if you're an executive and you're going to travel to Mississippi, I don't care, okay, for the wage and hour part of it. If you're an exempt person and you're sitting at your desk, I don't care. Why don't I care? Because you get the same salary no matter what you're doing. You get the same amount of money week in and week out regardless of quality or quantity of work. So sit at your desk, I pay you $1,000 a week. I pay you $1,000 a week if you're sitting at your desk. If you're traveling, I pay you $1,000. Okay? If you're sweeping floors, I pay you $1,000. If you're at a meeting, I pay you $1,000. So it doesn't matter what people do who are exempt, with only one exception, and that is if you have exempt employees who are paid the minimum under the federal law and they travel, you need to be careful because the federal law is lower than some of the states. For example, and I'm going to use California again because it's the highest, okay? You have to be paid $455 per week in order to be exempt as an executive. In other words, I'm a manager, and I'm exempt. I do only exempt work. I'm definitely exempt. There's no problem here. And I'm in Mississippi, and I'm paid $455 per week. However, if that person were to fly to, say, California, they're under California wage and hour law while they're there, because that's how wage and hour law works. So the problem is California requires you to pay somebody 2 times the current minimum wage of California, which ends up being, around $3,000 a month, whereas under the federal government you're only paying about $1,900 a month, $1,400, somewhere around there. So, or I think it's around $1,900. So you'd be well underpaid, and you would have a wage and hour problem. So when you're sending your exempt employees around, watch out for the wage and hour law, just for that one thing. Otherwise, we don't need to worry about it. Okay, so the general principles involved in doing travel pay and whether or not someone who is traveling is considered working depends on actually the type of travel and when it takes place, etc. Now, these are all contained in the Fair Labor Standards Act, but it's a companion piece. And what happened was they passed the Fair Labor Standards Act in 1938, and they immediately came up with a lot of lawsuits, which just happens every time we pass a law. So basically people said, well, I have to travel from my house to my job, so therefore that should be part of my job. And I have to get up in the morning and brush my teeth, so that should be part of my job. It got that ridiculous. So Congress passed the Portal to Portal Act of 1947, which clarified what were hours worked and gave us more of the information now on travel pay. So the first one we worry about is that I have to travel to work thing. Now, remember, wage and hour law always does double negatives. I don't know why, but they do. So it says no employer shall be liable for the failure to pay the minimum wage or overtime if you don't pay somebody for walking, riding, or traveling to or from their actual place of the principal activities, et cetera, et cetera. So what does that mean? It means that you don't have to pay them for commuting. You get 2 freebies every day. Home to work, work to home. Those are your freebies. However, they cannot be doing anything for you. You cannot say, well, while you're driving home.
Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to watch this clip from one of our online meetings. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, stay up to date, and stay compliant. This video is brought to you by GRCTS. We are also known as GRC Training Solutions. And here's a quick information about us and what we do. We conduct many compliance and non-compliance training courses throughout the year, covering some of the most important areas within several industries. Our focus is to provide the best and the most up-to-date classes to our audience. All training modules are designed and facilitated by industry subject matter experts who possess years and years of experience and understand compliance very well. Our customers attend our online classes from all over the world. If you're not available to attend live meeting classes, you can always opt in to get unlimited access to our on-demand or recorded classes. We also provide in-person and face-to-face workshops, on-site workshops where our experts will visit your company at your location and train you and your colleagues, LMS trainings, and finally corporate subscription plans where you pay a little amount to enjoy unlimited access to our courses. We have monthly, quarterly, and annual subscription plans. Here's our contact information for you. If you're interested in learning in any of these topics, or if you know a colleague or a friend who might benefit from our classes, please contact us or visit our website for more information. It's www.grcts.com. You can always send us an email, support@grcts.com, or just give us a call, 248-233-2049.